There we are. Good evening. I'd like to call the study session to order and have a roll call.
Alderperson Robinson. Hurt. Gilbert. Swanson. Here. Parker.
Here.
Pulis.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
And Mayor Tomes.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Public comment. Nobody signed up for public comment, so we can move to item number 4, presentation. So we have, is that, who's on the? Sarah's got it, okay.
Can you hear me, Robert?
I can hear you, yes. Good
Okay,
evening,
wonderful. I'd like to introduce Robert Heacock. He's with ETC Institute out of Olathe, Kansas, and he will give you a brief presentation on his proposal for a community satisfaction survey. And then, so Robert, when you begin, we'll just switch to the slides. I'll go ahead and forward through the slides for you. And then at the end, we'll go back to you and you can answer questions from the council if they have any.
Sounds good. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. It's a pleasure to
evening.
be here.
Can we turn the volume up?
Looking forward to talking to you tonight and about the possibility of ETC Institute conducting a community survey for you. Get things all set up here. Can you all see the screen okay?
We can. If you can continue to speak as loud as you can, so it's recorded. Yes.
Yes, sir, I will. Well, I can talk pretty loud. I'm not sure you want that loud, but I'll do my best to make sure you can hear me, sir.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, Robert Haycock with ETC Institute. Next slide, please. Sarah, if you can advance the slide, that'd be great.
It's advancing on our end, but I'm not sure it's advancing on your end.
Apparently it's not on the image here. That makes it more challenging if I can't see what you can see. Yeah, I can see this now, but we need to back up a few slides. There we go. All right, now next slide. So this is a footprint of ETC and where we've done business across the country. As you can see, we're a national leader in market research for public entities, mainly for cities and counties throughout the country. We've done a lot of work in your area, as you can see. Next slide. So quickly, what I would like to do is overview, and these are the kind of the steps that we're going to go through, or the phases of the survey. We're going to design the survey with in cooperation with you. We're going to then develop a sampling plan that's going to make this a scientifically valid survey. And we're going to administer the survey and then provide you a thorough analysis and report. Typically, our reports will be about 120 to 130 pages long. So next slide. So we're going to design a survey. Previous slide, I think, did we skip forward, or here we go. So we're going to tailor the survey to your needs, and I think that's really important. This is not just a cookie cutter survey. That said, a number of the questions are going to be benchmark questions that we've used in other cities and communities, so that you're not just getting a sense of how your citizens are responding, but you have a feel for how you respond, how you stack up kind of in response to how others that have the surveys that for other communities. We're going to help you craft the questions so that you can blend in some unique aspects to Rock Island and really make it something that addresses the issues of the day, so to speak, that you're looking at and you're concerned about. We're going to identify also, we're going to make sure that the sample is designed to ensure that the results are representative of the city's population. What that means is we're going to be cautious in developing it to make sure that it's replicatable, that we're paying attention to the demographics of your community, make sure it accurately reflects that. It's not some survey companies will come in and they're not really doing a scientifically valid survey. They're more interested in just getting a volume of responses, and they'll go on social media. Well, not everybody in your community uses social media, so we shy away from that and have kind of a traditional approach. Next slide. So we're going to administer the survey using a hybrid methodology that we've developed that's going to use a combination of mail and online. So we will develop a hard copy survey, probably about 6 pages long. We'll have a cover letter, Mr. Mayor, probably signed by you. It's going to go out in a city envelope. Cover letter be on city letterhead. It's going to alert the community that this is a legitimate city-backed project and process. So they won't put it in the trash. They'll open it and they'll fill it out. And they have the option of going online and filling that out as well. We do some phone methodology if necessary, but to be honest with you, we don't do a lot of phone work anymore, but that is a possibility we can. We'll also have a QR code on the envelope, so if somebody just wants to scan that and jump right to the survey, they can do so. We're gonna monitor the distribution of that survey to make sure that they reflect the right demographic composition of your city. Next slide. Okay, so the survey analysis and reporting. Sorry, I'm having an issue with the screen because it's showing two options here. So bear with me, please, if you can. We're going to analyze, as I said, report. We're going to give you a thorough report. And some of the items that we're going to talk about tonight are going to be included there, what we call the important satisfaction priorities analysis. So we will ask questions about how satisfied your citizens are with certain surveys. But that can be misleading if you don't kind of couple that analysis with a sense of how important those are to people. So what we will look at is that important satisfaction index, and there's an example of that coming up. We'll also do GIS mapping so that you can see for each of your wards whether the responses are different or whether or not they're the same across the city. We'll have those benchmark comparisons I mentioned, and we will also do crosstab and data segmentation to let you analyze to great detail specific population groups and how people responded. And then we're going to provide you with that report, and we'll give your staff an opportunity to provide comments and feedback before we finalize that. Then I believe the proposed contract will have a virtual presentation to present the results. Next slide. So this is an example of what the important satisfaction rating that I was talking about. So let's just say, theoretically, ask the question, how satisfied are you with dog parks in the community? Well, maybe they're very dissatisfied with the level of dog parks because there's only one. But how important is it is the real question too. So if you don't ask both of those questions, it can be misleading. But here you have a number of different areas, and we'll do this. This is just an example of maintenance service related questions in Pflugerville, Texas. And you can see there we had them rank the importance from 1 to 8 and the satisfaction rating on the third column there. Basically what you end up with is helping you see what are the most important items to your citizens. So in this case, it would be the condition of major streets and neighborhood streets in that particular community. Next slide. So major categories of services. This is an example from Sugar Land, Texas, and what you'll be able to see is how your results stack up to others in the region and in the United States. So you'd be in the Midwest region, and then we'd also look at the national ratings, how you compare. Just happens that Sugar Land is well above the national averages and the regional averages in every category. Next slide. This is an example of what the GIS maps would look like. In this case, we broke it down by census tract. In a lot of cases, we do it by council district or ward. But you can kind of get a feel here for the dark blue is very satisfied. The light blue is somewhat satisfied. Then you have neutral. In some cases, we'll do surveys and you'll have areas that are dark red for people that are really they're really dissatisfied with a particular service. And it makes quite the picture where you have a range of different colors. That really makes it easy to spot. I should say that these surveys are intended to be kind of a snapshot in time. It's an opportunity for you to engage with staff and for staff to engage with you, with the community, to kind of really see what's going on. I've seen maps before for items like water satisfaction with water services where the entire community is dark blue, but there was a little pocket of deep red. Well, that particular community, once they saw that, they dug into it and they found out that, oh, there was actually some water main breaks and some other issues that had lowered the water pressure, and they were unaware of that because nobody called in, I guess. But the result of the maps was it really led them in the right direction to address that particular concern. Next slide. As I mentioned, we'll also provide the cross tabulations and data segmentation so that you can analyze how specific groups within your community responded to particular questions. So if you let's say, just for example, you wanted to know how people over a certain age responded to certain questions related to the police department or satisfied with customer service at City Hall, those would be items that you can look up in that data. Next slide. Something we have is called an interactive dashboard. We're not going to be providing that to you, but it's something that it's a data analytics tool that we encourage you to think about, especially if you end up doing more than one survey with ETC. What it will allow you to do is to correlate different data from questions. So you might say, I would like to know how women over the age of 40 answered the question of how satisfied they are with safety in their neighborhood, how safe they feel in their neighborhood at night, something like that. And you can bring up the results of that question and then correlate it immediately with the question of adequacy of streetlights, for example. And there's countless other examples of where you can correlate different questions together, kind of see where specific population sets land in terms of their satisfaction with certain services. That's a service we provide for $500 or for free for $5,000, not for free, but one time. Sorry, a little sick today, and I'm running low on energy, but I'll get you through here, I promise. It's a one-time cost, I should say, for $5,000, and it's something that the more surveys we do over time, you can really track those and how things have changed. Next slide. This is basically a summary of the cost proposal that we've provided. And with that, next slide. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I might have missed it, but my first question is, how many surveys do you plan on trying to achieve or have?
Yes, for your community, we'll do 400 completed surveys, which means we'll send out probably, in our sample, probably 3,000 to 3,500 folks will actually receive the survey. The 400 response would provide a plus or minus a 5% level of accuracy. So if you see in a lot of surveys, they kind of talk about that margin of error, and typically it's a 5% margin of error. You can increase that number. It's kind of diminishing returns on your investment, though. It takes a lot to lower it below 5%. So that's the goal.
With that, obviously by ward or at least somewhat geographic, if you got 500 back but you had none from a specific ward or areas, do you continue to pursue that ward or that geographic area even though you have the number you want?
Yes, sir. We're going to make sure that the end result is representative of the community, and in terms of not just geographic locations, but in terms of the demographics as well. Further, if there's a particular issue that's a concern, I recently completed a survey for a community that had a real concern about renters, and because they had a really high rental population, they wanted to make sure that, you know, we had a fair number, representative number of folks that were in their category. So yeah, we would make sure that the response that we receive is representative of all of those different areas.
How often do you recommend doing a survey?
We recommend, I mean, it's really up to each city. I have some clients that will do one every year. I think that's a little overkill myself. I think you can do one every 2 years or possibly even 3 years. It really depends. If you want to give, you want to give the opportunity to you and your staff to develop an action plan of how you're going to respond. And, it's tough to move the needle in 1 year. But in a couple of years, I think you can see some change, some significant change in some cases. We also offer different kinds of services, and one of those that's really been developing a level of interest is business surveys. And I see a lot of my clients will do a community survey 1 year and they'll do a business survey the next. It's interesting to see whether or not the businesses and the citizens kind of line up in their priorities and their levels of satisfaction with different services. And plus, after COVID, we find a lot of, interest in, what's happening with businesses and, economic development in our community is a hot topic. So that's generally how I would respond to that.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about the business aspect of it, but, so we're doing residential and not business.
Yes, sir. This is a citizen survey, not a business survey.
And I apologize, this is Alderman Robinson for not being here in the beginning, so you may have covered this. What is your delivery method for the survey? How are the surveys going to actually be distributed out to residents?
Yeah, yes, sir. We will do it through a hybrid method. We're going to mail it out. We're going to have a hard copy mail with a cover letter, most likely from the mayor, explaining what it is. It will have a hard copy of the survey in an envelope that they can return it in. We'll also offer it online and try to encourage people that are comfortable with filling it out online to do that. We do that just to make sure, and I mean, I know things have changed and it's certainly not don't want to be stereotypical here, but in general, we will see younger folks are more apt to fill something out online, even maybe on their phone. And that's why we have even a QR code in the envelope. So if somebody just wants to scan the QR code and go right to it, they don't even have to log into something or go online.
Well, I don't know if this has been shared with you, but typically we don't get a good response for surveys in this city, especially in my ward. I think last survey we did, it was less than 5% of the residents actually completed the survey, and it was done pretty much the same way, QR code, in person. So just want to throw that out there, possibly look at some different, come out of the box, creative ways of trying to get this actually done. Because I don't think my residents are actually going to really take part of it unless we find some effective way to get them involved with it. And I don't have the answer of how to do that. That's what I mean. Just in past surveys, we have not had good responses from, especially my ward. I don't know if any other alderperson wants to speak on their particular wards, but I know in my ward particularly, it's not a great response. So I don't know how, if it's a delivery or if it's how it's packaged. I don't know. I don't know if that all needs to go into, thought. Some people might see Cedar Rock Island and just throw it away. I don't know.
Well, Alderman, one of the things that we will try to do, and with that knowledge, I can make the commitment. We will include a $500 gift card as an incentive for people to fill it out, a chance for a gift card. That type of a raffle tends to generate a lot of interest.
My address
is. And there are other methods. There are other methods that we use. I'm sorry, I missed that.
My address. I was going to give you my address. You said a $500 gift card, so I was going to send you my address.
Oh.
Oh, that's over our threshold. I guess we can't.
Yeah. Only in Chicago.
No, but I think that's things like that. But again, one of the issues we have is just getting people to know, hey, this is even an option. You have a $500 gift card that you can possibly get, and not saying that that's the number, if you complete this survey, complete the survey. So it's a struggle just to try to have that communication, because there's a communication gap. I mean, it's not something that's not known, but there is a communication gap with our residents.
I understand that, Alderman, and we've run into that in other communities. Believe me, I'm just wrapping up Dayton, Ohio, and they have issues in certain areas of the city that has that challenge, and many others that too numerous to probably mention. But I can tell you that we recently did a survey of 150 of our clients across the country, and we had 100% satisfaction with our city, and we've never missed a goal. So, we're going to make sure we do get that. There are other things we can do that we've started to do. We used to do text messages and emails and phone calling, but a lot of those have kind of, people have a lot of different emails. They have different phones, or they have caller ID, so they won't take the phone call if they don't recognize it. So we've taken to exploring other options like advertising on social media, on Facebook ads, things like that. So somebody might be scanning on their Facebook and see the ad for, oh, I can enter this and get a chance at $500. So yeah, believe me, we're happy to be creative, and if you and your staff come up with additional ideas, we'll certainly be interested in listening to that and pursue other options as we can. But it is important that we work with you to get the message out. I would say that the communities that are very active, even on a ward level, for you all to be getting the word out to your residents to say, hey, this is important. We really want to know what you think. That's critical to success as well.
One last hump will be the language barrier, because if you're sending this out, I'm assuming you're sending it out in English, and the demographics in my area is that's definitely not going to work because of just the melting pot of different cultural groups I have in my area. The language is a huge barrier for us.
Yes, sir. I understand, and again, you're not the only community with those challenges. We can sit down with your staff and talk. I'm not sure if I haven't looked at the population breakdown lately. I don't recall what percentage is Hispanic, for example, but we're capable of doing translations and having links to that in different languages. We just need to visit with you and make sure that it's a large enough group that we can actually effectively target them with doing that. We also have a phone number that we can list where if somebody has a language issue, let's say they're, Cambodian or Vietnamese or something of that nature, we have an interpretive service that can walk them through that and talk them through the survey and take the survey that way. So there are a number of different options that we can discuss with your staff to figure out, what could be a potential solution.
I have a question. This is Alderman Hurd. I also came in a little bit late, and I apologize for that. And you may have discussed this. As I'm looking at the fees and the 400 surveys, so just to be clear, is this 400 total surveys going out throughout the city? I mean, just 400, and how do you determine who's getting those surveys?
No, sir, I can clarify that. We're actually going to be mailing out probably, I estimate, and this is just an estimate at this point. It could be a little higher or lower depending. But we'll design the sample. We'll send out probably 3,000 to 3,500 actual surveys. We'll acquire a list of addresses within the community. Everything we do is address based. So we will have, we'll get the city boundaries from you. We'll get the ward boundaries if that's a reporting area that you would like us to report on those GIS maps by. We'll send those out. And then the goal is to get 400 that are representative of your demographics of your community. So the 400 isn't how many we're sending out. The 400 is the minimum number that we're going to want to receive back in order to make it statistically valid and hit that percentage. Should we get 800 responses or 900 responses, that's great. We don't charge you any more because we receive more responses than the goal. But The minimum goal, in your case, would be 400.
Okay, that was kind of confusing as I'm reading through the fees here and where it says the 400. So I didn't see that in the literature where it had that 3,000 number or whatever number you threw out there.
I'm just wondering, is this something that could be adapted so it could be sent out through the schools to have the kids take home? Because I think you are gonna have people that are gonna think it's a scam and not do it. And I'm just wondering if there's some way that it could be packaged to send home with kids, because most of the kids in our schools, even with the language issue, would have a little bit of, they should have a fair amount of English to be able to understand it, but they could possibly help their parents walk through it. And then it's actually coming home from a legitimate source. Not that you're not legitimate, but, you know, I'm just trying to think, how do we get the best response? Because, I don't know, it's a lot of money to spend to have somebody tell us what they like and don't like about our community, which, to be quite honest, we all kind of know what they like and don't like about our community. But for me, the part that I'm really interested in is the interactive dashboard, but then that raises the cost to $23,000. And, yeah, so I'm kind of struggling with it a bit.
So, and you might have touched on this when the mayor was asking this. So the 3,000, 3,500 surveys that you send out, those are representative of our demographics as a city. And then we're hoping we get 400 responses that will also be representative of our city's demographics, right? But it's like, how do you translate that? I mean, what if you get
All
more?
from one word.
Yeah,
That's what I
Yeah.
asked, yeah.
yeah, I'm just not, and as a former psych major in research, I'm like, it's been a long time since I took those classes, but I'm not sure how you ensure the representativeness of it.
That's my biggest concern.
Well, that's
is-
part of the
Go on, I'm
that's
sorry,
part
sir.
of the quality assurance steps that we utilize to, you know, to make sure, you know, that we do deliver that. And as I said before, I mean, I guess the proof is in the pudding for the practice that we've done and the reputation that we have, that we think we're the best in the business of being able to drive that, and we've had nothing but satisfied customers. I understand the concern, you know, from a lay standpoint. It's really not sure what goes all into that, and I'm not sure I can adequately kind of tell you today, okay, analytically, data-wise, exactly what happens. But I know that we monitor it closely as they're coming in, and we have, so when we acquire the data, a lot of times the data will have markers on it that tell us, you know, give us an insight into the age, the ethnicity, other factors related to that particular household. So we send out what we think was a representative number. We can also send out more, you know, depending upon, and then we can target some of those areas where we know those households that we know meet that particular criteria. The end result, I can assure you, we're very sensitive to making sure that all of those factors are taken into account. And we want a quality result for you to make sure that it is representative across the community. I used to be in local government myself, and this was a company that cities that I was with used. And we were always very satisfied with the results as well.
Who owns the data after it's harvested and reports?
Well, the city has access to the data that we provide, so we can give you the raw data, but we don't divulge ever the address, the specific address. The data that we would provide is down to the block level. So you might say the 400 block of Maine, but we're not going to tell you, oh, this survey came from 402 Maine, because in order for us to be effective, it has to be confidential.
Well, confidentiality is fine, but if we can get geographic location, let's say that the people in the Augustana area don't like the fact that the speed limit is 30 miles an hour. You know, and that would be something important for us to know. So if we had that data or had access to that data, then we could make more intelligent decisions.
Yes, sir, and I think that's part of the design and the rationale for doing the survey is that, like with the GIS maps, we'd be able to show you what particular, is there a differentiation, if you know, people that responded from a certain area of the community, you know, how satisfied are they relative to some of the other folks in the community as well. That's part of the reason why we break the data down that way.
Thank you.
Mr. Healy, did you get your question?
I didn't really have a question. It was more just kind of a concern that, you know, it only sending out 3,000 to 3,500 surveys, you're roughly sending out 430 to 500 surveys per ward. I just personally don't think that's enough. And then to kind of piggyback what Alderwoman Swanson said is, together all that data is awesome, but if we don't get it all for the extra $5,000, I mean, to not get that's kind of frustrating in my end. And I understand it's an upsale, but, you know, to not get all of the data, little frustrating. So, I mean, roughly, we're paying $45 a survey is what, when you break it down number-wise, 18,000 at 400 surveys, that's $45 a survey. That's a lot. So, and we got.
Well, I can clarify, Alderman, if I can, Alderman, that, you know, you are receiving all the data. The dashboard is is the data analytics tool that allows our clients to do, you know, to query the data and to analyze the data. And usually why we don't market that in year one is because, you know, we're new to you all, and that dashboard has a lot of value, tremendous amount of value, especially for our clients in the second or third, you know, iteration of the survey, because you have more than just 1 year's of data loaded in there. We're certainly willing to talk to you about, you know, more about that, and if that's something that we can include. It would require an increase in cost. I'm willing to sit down and talk with your staff about whether that could be lowered from 5,000. But usually it's not something that we want to make sure people are aware of it. And certainly if somebody made a commitment for, say, 3 surveys over 5 years, we're going to include that. But at the risk of saying next I'm going to throw in floor mats or rust proofing and underneath the vehicle, you know, I don't want to come across the sound way, because we're not trying to nickel and dime anyone, and we're trying to make sure that you're getting value for the investment. It is a lot of money, and especially if you haven't done one before, we can understand some of the questions that you're asking and the skepticism. But I can assure you we do things the right way. The data is going to be very valuable to. I think the biggest value is being able to inform your citizens and say, hey, look, this is a statistically valid survey. We're not relying just on anecdotal experiences that individual people had, or individual citizens or people who may come forward and say, hey, I represent my neighborhood. And the reality is they may or may not really represent the neighborhood, but it can give you all a common data point, a common starting point to look at those and look at those priorities, you know, as we present them in the report.
So my math isn't super great, but so if there's 40,000 people in the city,
33,
there's only 33?
36.5.
Huh?
36.5.
So what is 400, what percentage is 400, like? That's what I'm thinking, it's like 1%.
Statistically, it works, but I don't know.
10%.
Would it be 10% or what?
No, that'd be
No,
that'd be
it'd be- you're right,
4,000.
You're right.
3,600.
Yeah, so the issue is, what percentage of the population makes it statistically accurate within 5%?
Why can't I understand
And 400, it's slightly under 400. I think it's like 390 something, but we rounded up to 400.
Percentage, I mean, what percentage is that? I was never good at percentages. Is
It's
that
a little
1%?
A little over 1%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking, is a 1%. I mean, I can sit there and, I mean, I don't mean to be negative, I really don't, but I'm like looking at this GIS map, about who's satisfied and dissatisfied, and I can already tell you I could do this map for you and tell you who's satisfied and who's unsatisfied based on all of us in our ward. I mean, I don't mean to be negative, my concern is it's a lot of money for a 1% to hear about what 1% of the city think.
I'll say that I'm not, well, let me rephrase that. Not that I'm not interested in what the residents have to say, but like you say, we already know what the residents have to say. What's valuable to me is that this is a quantifiable way for us to measure our progress as a city, right? So if we know in 2024, 67% of residents said that the roads were terrible, and then in February, we institute a infrastructure fee, and we do $2 million more in road work over the next year, and then in 2 years from now, we do another survey, and that number drops, we can see, whether or not the improvements are working, whether people are more satisfied with their road
But then you're
conditions.
committing
it's
to
not-
20 grand every 2 years.
That's
but it-
correct. I don't think we should do this if we're just gonna do it once.
Or,
correct.
or does,
67%. It's like one.
Well, yeah, it's probably 95%, but
So
the point,
you can't attribute that what that 1% are saying across.
But the issue is statistically, I'm not an answer for him. The mathematicians statistically say that 400 does represent, you can extrapolate that, and that does represent your total population.
and it's just, even if it is
Numbers
only,
statistically are there.
Yeah, I know that's what, yeah.
even if it's only the 400, how do those 400 people change over the 3 years or so, right? I mean, if,
You would
But
have
is
to
it the s-
continue to survey the same 400.
Yeah, it would have to be the same 400,
Well,
I mean, and there's no way you
I'm
can.
not a statistician, but apparently you can
Guarantee.
extrapolate.
Right.
We need to-
does
or
the
did-
cost of
Well,
this
part
stay
of that,
the,
if I could interject just for a second on that. You're correct, Alderman, in talking about how that becomes representative of the entire population. It's not necessary to survey the exact same 400. What's important is that future samples reflect the same attention to demographics and, overall distribution within the city. So to make it benchmarkable, to make it repeatable in terms of the future surveys, you have to go about it the same way in developing that sample, so that if your community has 40% of your community is over the age of 50, you don't want a survey where only 10% of the respondents are over the age of 50. So those are the markers that we look at from the census that we're tying to your community. We're making sure that it accurately reflects the composition. I hope that helps.
I do have a question on the cost. So while we're looking at this 18,000 or 23,000, depending on services, is that a price that stays consistent throughout the time, or does that go up over every year, or?
Our prices have gone up very, very slowly, marginally. I would say that we have some clients, like I said before, who will come at this and say, we want to do a package of 3 surveys over 5 years. Will you include the dashboard, at no extra cost? Those are things we've thrown in and agreed to do, because really we're here, and our passion is to work with communities to help them see, as one of the aldermen said a minute ago, what's really important is being able to measure progress. Otherwise, you can do lots of activities and you make the people in a particular area happy that you fixed their sidewalk or fixed their road, but you're not getting a big picture of how are things changing over time, and are we really gaining on the issues that the citizens have said are important. So that's why we do look at doing multiple surveys if possible. But again, it's one of these things, this is the first time you've done one, and it is a lot of money, and asking you to commit to 20,000 is different than saying 60,000. And so generally speaking, we're at the beginning stage of a relationship, a partnership, hopefully with your community, like we have with so many others across the country. And our goal would be to come back, sit down with you, go over the results, and then, see when you want to do the next one. And all that data is in one place. With the dashboard, it does give you the advantage that you can look it up from anywhere. Anywhere you have access to the internet, you can log into that and utilize that data to help respond to certain questions that people in the community may have.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna have to conclude this. We have another presentation. We have basically less than 15 minutes to get that in. So if we're all right, we need to move on to the next.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for your time.
All right, item number 5.
Closed session, 5 ILCS 122C11 litigation when an act against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding must be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting. 5 ILCS 122C21, discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed under this act, whether for purposes of approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes, is mandated by section 206.
Move to go into executive sessions for exception cited.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Alderperson Healy.
Aye.
Robinson.
Aye.
Hurt.
Aye.
Gilbert. Swanson.